First, thank you to Eric Awai and Professor Marko Zikovic, the convener of this conference, the Evolving Rhythms, African Diaspora Movement Practices in Canada Conference 2026. The vision of a conference like this speaks to the power of gathering to decolonize minds and create opportunities to learn about knowledge systems outside colonial spaces, even as we still operate within them. The hope is that, like the flowing stream, the old will give way to the new. So thank you to the partnering organizations for their support, which made the conference a reality. Special thanks to all the volunteers, research assistants, all the presenters and other speakers, and everyone involved in organizing the conference. I acknowledge that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. I acknowledge the known custodians of the land where I live and work. Regina, so known as Treaty 4, is the homeland of the Anishinaabeg, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nations. University of Regina and the Center for Social Engaged Theatre is located on this territory. My sincere apologies that I'm unable to join you in person. I have another engagement nationally, hence my coming to you via this medium. I also do want to acknowledge the gifts and the challenges that the internet space has created. Yes, I can connect with you virtually, but the impact is being felt through water systems, forest workers from many African and non-African countries. So to this end, I want to say that collective efforts like these are one of the ways that we can address critical issues in our community. I hope the knowledge we create and share together can build an equitable future. Yes, it is not equal, but we won't give up in clamoring for and working towards creating equitable systems, structures. Finally, I want to acknowledge that I wear multiple hats. Before I came to the Academy, I ran my initiatives, including Theatre Ministry International, the Mobile Research Lab, and the Festival of Art and Discourse, among many others. Thus, I am grateful for the learning, the network, relationships, and the opportunities that these initiatives offered me, which the Academy has benefited from immensely. Thank you to the Center for Social Engaged Theatre and to all of everyone within the center that I work with. The title of my short provocation, my keynote today, the learning from history about movement systems for personal and communal and national development through Moremi Ajasoro's lens. Onílámọ̀ a ò mọ̀la. Ohun tá a ṣe lónìí, ìtàn ni lọ́la. Ṣe dáadáa ọ̀rẹ́ mi kí ọ̀la rẹ lè sunwọ̀n. In his seminal work, Decolonizing the Mind, the Politics of Language in African Literature, published 40 years ago, Ngugi wa Thiong'o challenged us to rethink how we prioritize and privilege colonial knowledge, particularly language. Through his work, Thiong'o drew our attention to language and its constructive role in national culture, history, and identity. His proposition is that if we want to decolonize the mind, we must decolonize our language of communication. The question of whether to write in an African language or not has been central to many post-colonial writers and authors, such as Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Wole Soyinka, and Oliver Lovesay, a scholar of Ngugi wa Thiong'o. For instance, in his book on Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Lovesay quotes Albert S. Gerard on this question. I quote, "This is the dilemma of African writer today. Either he used a European language and thus gain recognition and financial reward from a worldwide audience, but at the risk of cutting himself off from the very root of all, but the most esoteric, creative flowering, the common experience of his own society, or he may use his own mother tongue, stoically shun the appeal of the world market, remain one of the inglorious meltons of the present age, but help his own peoples advance into the age of mass literacy and pave the way for future achievements and renown. This was the reality of Ngugi. As we know, at some point in his writing career, he chose to live in the reality of linguistic decolonization by writing only in his local language, Kikuyu. While I can't present my keynote in Yoruba, my mother tongue, I can share some words with you and share knowledge from my people, like I just shared a few seconds ago. I can share some insights and learnings from my culture. Such knowledge constitutes epistemologies from the South, which, according to Boaventura de Sousa Santos, are critical for addressing what he referred to as cognitive injustice, which is the failure to recognize the different ways of knowing by which people across the globe live their lives and give meaning to their existence. Global social justice is possible only when there is global cognitive justice. It might involve disrupting centers of knowledge for local knowledge. At times, it might require rebelling or resisting by choosing not to mainstream local knowledge, especially when reciprocity, trust, and mutual respect are absent. Such a gesture or response can help preserve local language so that it doesn't get into the wrong hands. At times, it might mean choosing to play, showcase, and display for all and sundry. Whatever shape or form cognitive justice takes, it has to be rooted in deep awareness of histories and her histories to right wrongs and create an equitable future of dignity for all. The story of Moremi. Long ago, the people of Ile-Ife lived in constant terror. They were plagued by a group of mysterious raiders known as Igbo, the forest people. These raiders were unlike any warriors the Ife people had ever seen. They appeared not as men, but as frightening, unearthly spirits covered from head to toe in airy bamboo leaves and grass. Believing they were being attacked by gods or demons, the Ife warriors were too paralyzed by fear to fight back. Each raid left the city depleted of its crops, livestock, and people. Moremi was a woman of immense beauty and status, the wife of King Oromiyan. Distraught by the suffering of her people, she realized that Ife would fall unless the secret of Igbo raiders was uncovered. She went to the river of the river goddess Esimiri and made a solemn, terrifying vow. If the goddess would help her discover the secret of the raiders and save Ife, Moremi would sacrifice whatever the goddess demanded in return. Another version says that Moremi would sacrifice the first thing that comes out to greet her when she's back from her expedition. During the next raid, Moremi allowed herself to be captured. Because of her extraordinary beauty, she was not treated as a slave, but was instead taken to the palace of Igbo king, who eventually made her his queen. While living among her enemies, Moremi remained ever watchful. She eventually discovered the truth. The spirits were merely men in elaborate disguises. To create their frightening appearance, they wore clogs made of dried raffia and bamboo leaves. She realized their weakness immediately. Fire. If the Ife warriors attacked the raiders with torches, the dry leaves would ignite, and the demons, quote and unquote, the demons would be easily defeated. Cognitive justice within the context of knowledge systems means boldly acknowledging multiple knowledge systems rather than making one knowledge system lord over others. This type of justice can counter what Tony Falola termed epistemic injustice or cognitive annihilation, a direct consequence of colonial and neo-colonial intellectual structures. According to Falola, knowledge in every area of human history has been a site of power, and the power dynamics of Western knowledge production have led to the systemic devaluation or annihilation of African indigenous knowledge forms. This silencing prevents indigenous ideas from being considered valid in academic discourse, limiting their role in development discourse. Falola's vision includes decolonizing knowledge and knowledge systems, reclaiming academic agency, and reevaluating African concepts. One way to achieve epistemic justice in Africa, reclaim African identities, and restore knowledge system is through historicizing and rewriting history. Thus, I position my keynote on the premise that disobedience is a necessary ingredient for cognitive justice, resistance, and activism. These ideals are critical strategies for decolonization and for restoring dignity to the human race. I use the story of legendary Yoruba queen Moremi, who epitomizes the theme of this conference, Moremi Ajasoro. Moremi is an embodiment of knowledge. Moremi is a gateway into the possibility that exists if we take action to address issues, whether personal or systemic. Through Moremi, we see the power of one, which is critical for any development. Through her vision, we see the possibility of inspiring the masses to take collective action. Through her bravery, she moved across sites and locations to bring liberty to her people, the Yorubas. Moremi's story underscores the fact that African, Caribbean, and Black movement systems are living epistemologies, ontologies, and lifestyles that continue to shape our worlds. So I hope to trace her lived experience and embodied response to the oppression of our time as a pathway to mobilize as both living theories and moving practice that derive personal transformation, community resilience, and national development.
Moremi Ajasoro. Moremi Ajasoro. Moremi Ajasoro. Olori Moremi. Iya Oluorogbo, thank you for going to the camp of Igbos for the Ife people.
I receive your accolades with gratitude.
Moremi, Oninure, your selfless act saved our people.
Like other women that have gone before me, I asked myself, what can I do to bring peace to the land of Ile-Ife and to my people? I was in the palace, but I heard the cry of my people each time the Igbos attacked us.
Moremi Ajasoro. Moremi Ajasoro. Moremi Ajasoro.
I thought to myself, be a spy, know their secrets, and return to your people with your discovery. And that's exactly what I did. I prayed to Esimeme, the goddess, and she helped me throughout my journey. I returned safely to save my people.
You are a God among us.
Modupe, thank you. Did you know that there are other women who offered themselves for their land?
Moremi. Olori. Olori Moremi. How do you mean?
Yes, there are many other women in other villages and settlements who led their people to war.
But we have not heard about them.
Well, we have been considered as hidden figures.
Many scholars who have written on the concept of disobedience align with different positions. For instance, the classical liberal paradigm, such as John Rawls and Henry David Thoreau, considers that disobedience is defined by public, not violent, conscientious, and communicative act of law-breaking intended to appeal to a majority's sense of justice, often requiring acceptance of legal penalties. Gandhian disobedience focuses on non-cooperative and civil acting, politeness, respect, as a political tool to pressure governments, often blurring the lines between moral and political justifications. On civil disobedience, questions the necessity of nonviolence and public action, defending on civil actions that might be covert, evasive, or offensive, such as those used by environmental or animal rights movements. Disobedience as communicative action focuses on its role in altering public discourse and argues for a duty to resist. For example, in A Duty to Resist, when disobedience should be uncivil, Candice Delmar argues that in the face of structural injustice, there is a moral duty to disobey, which may include uncivil forms of resistance. The legend of Moremi Ajasoro is one of the most revered epics of the Yoruba people, detailing the courage of a woman who sacrificed her own comfort and her only son to save the holy city of Ile-Ife from destruction. Moremi was a rebel, no doubt. She disobeyed. She resisted. She was unsatisfied with fear, inaction, and the lack of answers. She questioned the status quo and took unprecedented action to challenge the oppressive system. Disobedience that came as nonviolent. Her disobedience was strategic, slow, and quiet. She teaches us that disobedience is not necessarily loud or fast. Rather, it is bold and brave. The act of surrendering oneself, herself in this case, to the enemy as a slave in itself is both a heroic act and an act of disobedience. Her strategy demanded that she behave throughout her stay in the enemy's camp so that she wouldn't be discovered. She learned their secret and escaped to inform her people. Moremi mastered the art of espionage before Hollywood introduced us to the idea. Moremi was a spy. Really, she was. A task that was self-imposed due to her heart and love for her people. Her disobedience forged and forced a change. I imagine there were king's advisors who might disagree with Moremi's strategy, perhaps because she was a woman. However, she stayed true to her conviction. She did something unprecedented. She must have even been talked out of her crazy ideas many times, and by many people, perhaps including her husband, the king. She was resolute, though, because of her sense of duty to resist and the responsibility to her people. She sacrificed. She came, she saw, and she conquered. Inquire the way from the one who knows, and you will find it, provided you are a deep listener. It's a quote by Oladigba Yemisi Afolabi, my biological parents. Ile Latin kesorode. Having secured the secret, Moremi escaped the Igbo kingdom and trekked back to Ile-Ife. She revealed the truth to her husband, the king, and the Ife generals. When the Igbo raiders next attacked, they were met not with cowering citizens, but with a wall of fire. The Ife warriors brandished flaming torches, setting the raffia costumes ablaze. The raiders fled in terror and were defeated, and the city of Ile-Ife was finally freed. If indeed disobedience is critical for change, bravery is necessary for justice, and persistence is essential for building enduring knowledge systems. In my culture, as in many African cultures, Yoruba knowledge is passed down through adages, poems, riddles, songs, stories. Knowledge systems are sustained through oral literature. At home time, during meals, bedtime, craft, sculptures, every time became learning time. We learned outside the four walls of the school because everywhere was a class, and anyone in any situation can be a teacher for that period. As immigrants in and to Canada, how might we engage in disobedience to build an ACB knowledge system? What can these even look like in our day-to-day life? As our journey in the diaspora, what can these look like in our day-to-day? So, a gesture of disobedience is to choose to speak your language to your children. Sing in your own language and from the culture of your people. Speak out when you see something wrong. Support one another to advance in meaningful ways without pulling each other down. A gesture of disobedience might be to self-mobilize for a collective purpose, bind together to become a formidable force in business, cherish trust given to you or to us, choose to vote for the future of your children and your born generation, volunteer to advance a cause that matters to you, learn the histories and her stories of the new country we now call home, be an ally to your neighbors, no matter their nationality or background. Through these acts of disobedience and many more, we're restoring knowledge systems rooted in our ancient roots, because we're embodying ancient knowledge systems in new bodies. We're rebelling and reinforcing our roots even as we navigate colonial encounters through our routes. The animals asked the ant, "Why do you work so hard when no one would remember you when you are gone?" The ant replied, "They may use their broom to knock me off the ground. They may stomp me to death in a second, but the call to duty asked me to keep doing my part for the generations to come, because I was brought here for a purpose. I am part of the ecosystem, and without me, it is still incomplete. So through my existence, I complete it." Moremi leaned into her strength. She wasn't distracted because she was brought to the palace. She escaped from the Igbos after discovering their secret. And by the way, the Igbo in the story is not the same as the Igbos. Just want to put that out there so that there won't be confusion. She escaped from the Igbos after discovering their secret and revealed it to the king and the Ife generals. Moremi's land was liberated. Farmers planted and reaped their labor. Families experienced peace, and the land flourished. Children didn't play in fear and bondage that the Igbos might show up at any time. Tales by moonlight were truly told by moonlight, but it came at a price. Moremi chose her people over her comfort. Today, Moremi is remembered as the Queen of Liberty. Her legacy is celebrated annually during the Edi festival in Ile-Ife, where stories of the raffia-clad raiders and her supreme sacrifice is reenacted, ensuring that the courage of the woman who saved a nation is never forgotten. This points to something. Cognitive justice would come at a price. Epistemic justice would come at a sacrifice. The silencing, the epistemic and ontological silencing and annihilation, as articulated by Falola and many other scholars on the continent and beyond, would come through the act of disobedience and bravery. So to conclude my keynote, I'd like to offer some provocation. Disobedience requires brave actions. In fact, disobedience is shown through brave action. It's shown through the act of faith, the state of the world and the vision of a preferred future for the seventh generation, as many of our indigenous communities would say. Seventh generation requires a collective disobedience. Within the African Diaspora Movement Practices in Canada and beyond, what knowledge might Moremi and other stories then offer us as we think about our collective presence in the country? How can we translate these knowledge in plural into everyday use, whether we get it from the adage, storytelling, from tales by the moonlight, whether it's through totems and stories of the land? How might we translate these knowledge, these epistems, into a daily reality, into a personal and collective effort that can lead to national development? Finally, Moremi's choice invites us to bravely stand up for one another. While history doesn't tell us what happened, the day-to-day realities of Moremi while she was with the Igbo people, we know that the act and the art of espionage demands sacrifice. So, the sacrifice is to show up for each other. It's in the little things. It starts with me. It starts with you. Through us, our light can shine, and we can build ACB knowledge systems so that our stories can be shared by future ancestors. The CT celebrated Moremi as a hero, but the time came for her to fulfill a vow. She returned to the river Esimiri to pay her debt. The goddess did not ask for gold or cattle. She demanded Ella, Moremi's only son. Heartbroken but bound by her word, Moremi sacrificed her son to the river. The entire city of Ife mourned with her, promising that they would forever be her children to compensate for her loss.